You're not welcome. Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody here today and those online to the Middlesex County public meeting for the official planned amendment. And I'd like to call this meeting to order at 2:05 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder to open this meeting? Moved by Councillor Grantham, seconded by Councillor DeVete. All in favor? And that's carried. The County of Middlesex is reviewing its official plan to ensure that the land use planning policies are current, reflect updated provincial policy, and reflect changing community needs for the next 30 years. Notice of this meeting was given in accordance with the Planning Act and also through social media and other formats. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide the public with an opportunity to make representations either in support of or in opposition to the proposed official plan amendment, or submit ideas and feedback for consideration. Middlesex County is using a hybrid format for this meeting, whereby the public may participate electronically or in person. Those participating electronically were asked to pre-register for their delegation. Registration instructions were provided within the notice of meeting and on the county website. Those wishing to watch but not address council have been directed to the county's YouTube channel. In terms of procedure, Abby Heidel Jacobs is going to provide an overview of the proposed official plan amendment. Then the floor will be open to those registered online and those present in person to address county council. I'll also make a note that those that are online and have not registered, we will ask by a show of hands if they would like to participate when the time is appropriate. I will also note that the agenda includes written submissions received as of the agenda deadline, December 1st, 2025, and at a future council meeting, a report seeking direction from council will be presented by county staff. Please note that if a person or a public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the County of Middlesex before the proposed official plan amendment is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the County of Middlesex before the proposed official plan amendment is adopted, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal, they are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. I would like to now introduce Abby Heidel Jacobs to deliver her report.
Thank you. Through you to members of council. I just want to start by saying thank you for joining us for the statutory public meeting on the county official plan. Your participation is an important part of the planning process, and we greatly appreciate your time and interest in helping shape the future of the county. So I've included a brief agenda that just provides an overview of what I'll be presenting on today. Starting with what is an official plan. So an official plan is a document that sets out land use policy vision based on long-term goals and objectives. It is council's primary tool for making land use decisions. It directs and guides land use policy and physical planning on a broad basis by primarily dealing with issues of provincial and county interest. And it recognizes the planning powers and authorities vested in local municipalities. Next slide, please. So as part of the official plan update, the county undertook a comprehensive engagement process. This included 5 meetings of the Planning Advisory Committee, where key proposed policy changes were discussed by topic area. Agency circulation and Indigenous outreach also formed important components of the process. And this included in-person meetings with staff and several of our local Indigenous communities. Corey Consultants supported staff by assisting with a community survey, a non-statutory open house, and a series of interest holder workshops that were also based on topic area. Throughout the summer months, county staff met with staff from local municipalities to review and discuss the key proposed changes. All comments received up to December 1st have been appended as an attachment to this presentation on the agenda. It is, however, noted that an additional email correspondence was received earlier this morning from Peter Van Loan on behalf of Sifton Properties. In summary, the submission contains similar themes to some of their previous correspondence, and it will be addressed through a comment matrix in a future report to County Council. The statutory public open house was held on November 25th, which was also supported by Corey Consultants. The consultation and engagement summary prepared by Corey is appended as an attachment to the report or to this presentation as well. The engagement completed through Middlesex 2056 was integral in shaping the draft official plan that's before you today. And we appreciate the community members, local municipal and agency staff who took time out of their busy schedules to provide comments and allowed us to get to where we are today, which is the statutory public meeting. Based on recent changes to the Planning Act, as well as the updated policy direction in the PPS and emerging issues both locally and provincially, proposed revisions fell under the topic areas of agriculture, housing, growth and development, and economy. And I will touch on these in a bit more detail in the upcoming slides. So agriculture is, of course, the predominant land use across the county, and it's important to the economy and culture of Middlesex. The key proposed changes under this area include implementing an agricultural systems-based approach, which is a concept under the new PPS that essentially seeks to protect agricultural and agriculture supportive businesses, as well as the agricultural land base. The Planning Advisory Committee also looked at minimum farm parcel size, as well as slight adjustments to the surplus farm dwelling policies to ensure consistency with the PPS. Moving on to housing. So I think it's safe to say that we are in a period of rapid change, both locally and provincially as far as housing goes. Housing is certainly a complex issue that has implications for all of our communities. And housing was identified as a key issue through the entire consultation process. Key proposed changes in this regard include additional residential units, which was kind of a hot buzz topic throughout the consultation process, as there is quite a bit of interest in this housing type across all of our local municipalities. So lots of comments and feedback on the ARU policies. And then the proposed policies also reflect the recommendations of the Attainable Housing Review, which was completed in 2023. And essentially these recommendations aim to encourage the diversity of housing options within the county along the entire housing continuum, really. And it also brings the policies into more alignment with what's provided for in the new PPS. As for growth and development, there were a couple of key changes to the PPS that informed the proposed changes to the official plan. The first being the move away from the municipal comprehensive review process, which was the former process used by municipalities to assess settlement area boundary expansions, to the new, more applicant-led process to expand settlement areas. So the draft official plan contains a proposed evaluation policy framework that would be used to evaluate these types of applications when they do come forward. Next slide, please. Another key change under the PPS is the requirement for municipalities to align their population, housing, and employment projections with those published by the Ministry of Finance. And as council may recall, the county retained Watson Associates to undertake this work. So the projections in the draft official plan are based on the fall 2024 Ministry of Finance projections, and they reflect a 30-year planning horizon to 2056. The final growth projections report is appended to this presentation as an attachment on the agenda, and it was previously brought before council back in June for endorsement. Moving on to the economy topic area, the protection of employment areas through land use planning is fundamental to ensure that the county can continue to accommodate employment needs over the long term. The proposed policies reflect updated provincial policy on employment areas, which essentially just more narrowly scopes the types of uses that are permitted in employment areas with a heavier focus on industry such as manufacturing and warehousing. The draft official plan also proposes a framework that would allow for the establishment of regionally significant employment areas in local official plans. And these policies would essentially support larger contiguous tracts of employment areas that would have a greater regional benefit. So in terms of additional considerations, subject to further input from the public and county council, the proposed official plan amendment would incorporate new provincial legislation and policies, including bringing the OP into consistency with the new PPS, implement new county policy initiatives and plans, including the recently updated council strategic plan and the attainable housing review. It would guide growth over a 30-year period from 2026 to 2056. And it would reflect, where possible, input received through the Middlesex 2056 engagement process. And of course, County Council can consider additional changes based on input received through this public meeting today, as well as your own perspectives and any other considerations that come about. So wrapping up, the proposed official plan emphasizes a solutions-oriented planning approach to address current and future challenges while maintaining good land use planning objectives. It provides greater flexibility for local municipalities, allowing them to better rely on the policies of the county official plan, as well as implement those policies in the local official plan. And then lastly, it incorporates feedback from engagement with Indigenous communities, adding strengthened language to build upon and enhance existing related policies that were previously implemented through County Official Plan Amendment number 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abby. You've already, normally during this part of the meeting, I'd ask if there's any written submissions, but I believe you adequately addressed that in your presentation, so thank you very much. So next up, we have people who've registered to be here in person, and they're in the gallery. So once I announce your name, perhaps you could come up to one of the chairs with the microphone, and you just have to select the button to pick. So we have in front of us right now, we have Karen McLean from the OFA, we have Crispin Colvin from the MFA, and we have William Sanderson, who is online, and we may have other people online as well. So Crispin, why don't you start then, please?
Thank you, Warden, and congratulations on your election. I always thought it would be your husband.
He may have too, I don't know. Go ahead.
But that's dating myself big time, isn't it? Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today about the official plan. We've looked through the official plan, and we have a few comments to make, of course, all of them geared around agriculture. Because you start off in your official plan by saying the challenge is to protect agricultural lands and the natural environment. And we agree with that. The future is food, and food production and the growth of other land uses reduces that ability. So keeping agricultural land for farming is imperative. One of the other positives that I looked at as we went through your document was the expansion and upgrading of critical infrastructure. That's important for everybody, whether it's business or industries in our communities and in our county, but also for agriculture. But when you increase the infrastructure, make sure you take into account the large equipment that we have. We have this debate with provincial government on a constant basis. And I think you are probably far more aware of the challenges that equipment poses on the roads. We also looked at the development assessment report for the natural environment, and it included reference to agricultural impact assessments before any development on agricultural lands. And I'll refer to AIAs a number of times because they are critical to protecting agricultural land. People need to know what the land is used for. And the only way you can find that out is if you do an agricultural impact assessment. So we were pleased to see that reference in your plan. The aggregate resources section in 2.2.3, there's no requirement to demonstrate a need for new agricultural or aggregate resources. And that's a challenge for us because once you take the aggregate out, the land never produces food again. No matter what people say, and I know there's a piece near Thorndale that people point to and say, oh, look at the wonderful hay that it grows. Well, it doesn't grow hay. It grows smaller rocks that weren't valuable enough to take out. So be aware of that. Be conscious of it. Because if aggregate is recognized in your plan, it says recognized and managed as a non-renewable resource. Why is farmland not recognized as a non-renewable resource as well? Because it is a non-renewable resource. Agriculture, aggregate lands you have, and I quote, protected for long-term use. Again, why not agricultural lands? So we're concerned that agriculture becomes secondary use to aggregate use. And that, in our opinion, should not be. Again, in 2.2.4, you refer to the mineral and petroleum resources. Again, it appears to be a higher priority than food. And there's not very loose interpretation of rehabilitation of the lands. That is a concern as well. In 2.3 under growth management, we looked at that, and that's a bit of a challenge for everybody, I know. But we're concerned that housing projects whose purpose is to supply cheaper housing for people who are living in London and commute really is self-defeating. Because as you know, I've made presentations before about the cost of community services, and housing costs more than if you leave the land in farmland. So just to build houses to satisfy the desire for people who work in London, I think is a bit like tilting at windmills. So when you look at your communities to expand, think about, do you need them? Do you need expansion? Do you need it for the workforce? If you're attracting workforce, and I mentioned this to Mayor Grantham last week, if you were attracting a business that was going to promote agriculture, for example, a chicken processing plant or vegetable processing, we'll be the first in line to help you get that. We need that, we want it. And that housing that would be needed for those workers, we'll be there to champion that as well. So look at what you're looking for, think about what you're looking for. You have an ally in us if you so wish, but we can also kind of push back if we have to. So in the growth management hierarchy, growth projections, you should be looking also at the soil types. And Senator Black in Ottawa has done a major study on soil types throughout Canada, which includes Ontario, and the lack of really good soil that we have in our country. So it's imperative that you look at soil types as part of that agricultural impact assessment, so that you can determine if you're going to grow your communities or expand them, that they at least expand on areas where the soil is poorer. Some of the areas that I would, if I was sitting around the horseshoe, I would be looking at 402, 401 as the areas to growth, where you've got railways, you've got major highways going to the United States and going throughout the rest of the world for that matter. But I would discourage growth in other communities simply because we need to concentrate our growth in areas, in our opinion. So, and by controlling it and putting it in a more dense area, you also end up having multi-use buildings and more density, and that in turn saves more land. So that too is another positive. We also support the comments in the official plan about the encouraging use of underutilized and vacant municipal lands. That's been something we've talked to other ministers about over the years as well. I know there's not tons of unused land, but what there is should be used before we start to expand into other areas. And then 2.3.7.2, you talk about the number and range of mixed housing units. With only 850 housing units a year projected as being needed in the county, that's not a huge number. And it may be best if it can be, instead of spread out throughout the county, but in areas where employment is created or housing is needed for employment. And I realize it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We want jobs, but we need the housing to get the jobs. So it's a balance. And since I'm not one of the horseshoe people this right now, then that's a challenge for you. As well, in that section, there's a declining population. And so as a result, smaller units would be needed. So that again refers to intensification. You can intensify if you have only 2 people or 3 in a unit. They don't need to necessarily have a 3,000 square foot house with a big backyard. It's not the same as it was when I was a little kid. My parents wanted me out of the house. The intensification for multi-use as well under 2.3.7.3, you talk about reducing MDS in urban zones. And we think that's a good idea to help in the intensification. Reducing that MDS in an urban zone though, but I've emphasized urban because in the agricultural zones, it could create conflicts in land use. In 2.3.7.5, you talk about additional residential units in the agricultural areas. That's something that we've supported for a number of years, but the proviso is non-severable and no new lots created. But that allows for family members, and people have built shops with housing attached to it that provide residence for a family member and as well, or employees if needed. In 2.3.8, you talk about your settlement areas. We would discourage any growth in hamlets simply because hamlets will simply go out and out. Hamlets are not an intensification area. They're places that are going to go out instead of up. So we would certainly discourage hamlets. In the urban areas, of course, we encourage higher density, and the need for growth needs to be attached, hopefully, to new and expanding businesses and industries. The expansion of business that requires employees would obviously be something where you would want to have housing as well. So as I said earlier, we need to get away from the idea that we create housing simply to help people who want to get out of London and live somewhere else. In 2.3.9 in the agricultural areas policy, you quote, limit the introduction of uses that are not compatible, but you don't say to not allow uses that are not compatible. And that is a risk to us because you set a precedent if you allow something that might not be compatible. Whereas if you say simply, we will not allow that if it's not a compatible land use, then that makes far more sense.
1 minute warning.
Thank you. So the alternative and renewable energy section, solar should not be placed on prime agricultural land. We have people who have said, oh, you can patch the sheep underneath the solar. There aren't enough sheep in Canada to work with all the solar plants we have now, let alone more. So solar should not be on prime agricultural lands. Battery storage as well is another area that you need to be thinking about, not only from a fire suppression point of view, but they should be placed where the power is needed. So whether it's near a factory, a business, or an urban area, as opposed to in the middle of agricultural lands like some communities are doing. Settlement areas should not expand and should have an agricultural impact assessment as well. And if there's a conflict in land use, the minimum you should do is an AIA, but better to simply say no to alternate land uses. You also talked briefly about the Indigenous communities and making sure that they have public interest and participation. Please include agriculture in that. Give us the same opportunity to speak as you have today at other junctures along the way. You specifically mentioned the Indigenous community, but you never mentioned the agricultural and farming community. And the last thing I will say is we want to thank you for your position on the plant-based treaty, which has nothing to do with the official plan, but thank you. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. And just for the other speakers, there is a 10-minute max. So you've used the full 10 minutes, so good for you.
Thank you.
Okay, next person up would be Karen McLean from the OFA, or, oh, well, then it's 10 minutes per delegation, but you're a separate group, so.
Let me not come back.
Oh. So Karen, you don't wish to speak? No, you're good. It's, he was so comprehensive, you don't require, okay, great. Okay, we had another individual that registered online, but he is not here. And so if there's any other attendees online that would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will take you one at a time. So we'll wait for a moment for you to raise the hand icon on your laptops and computers. Okay. All right, so they've not done so, that's all we need to hear from them today. Are there any questions from council at this time? Councillor Smiver, go ahead.
Great, thank you. My question deals with, section 2.3.1 in terms of the growth management, and just have a question for staff. I just want to get a better understanding. It indicates that to support the coordination of growth management and infrastructure planning, local municipalities are encouraged to establish servicing capacity allocation policies. What would that policy look like? Or can you give us an example of a municipality that has a policy like that?
Yep, thank you for your question and through the warden. So those policies would vary based on the municipality. I believe a couple of our local municipalities have implemented them to date, including North Middlesex as well as Middlesex Center. And it's really contingent on the servicing situation in the municipality. And generally municipalities would use an engineering consultant to assist in the development of those policies. But yeah, that's what we have locally thus far.
Anyone else on council have a question? I'll ask one more time. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the official plan amendment presentation, written submissions and delegations be received for information, and that staff be directed to prepare a report to council detailing the proposed County of Middlesex official plan amendment, including an analysis of all comments received at an upcoming meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Smybert, seconded by Councillor McGuire. All in favor? And that's carried. We now have a recommendation that the public meeting adjourn and council reconvene into regular meeting at 2:31 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. All in favor?